Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. I'm Martin Fish, joined by Jill and Sean.
Hello.
Hi.
And this week I'm going to be having a chat with Pete Walker from Wack's Wicked Plants about the interesting plants that he grows.
Not as delicate as you might think they are as well. But later on, we've also got some tips on watering because we're mid-July now. So certainly where we are in the Northern Hemisphere, it's getting a bit warm.
And we've got some questions from listeners for Martin. What about naturalising alliums in the garden? So I'll be listening to that because we want to get a few more going in ours. But first, let's have a chat to Pete from Wack's Wicked.
Wack's Wicked Plants, Carnivorous Plants is what it says on the banner at the back of the stand here. So I want to find out exactly what they are. So I've got Pete here from Wack's Wicked Plants. What are they, Pete? What's carnivorous plants?
Carnivorous plants are plants that have evolved to supplement their diet by catching insects. So rather than nutrients in the soil, they catch nutrients on the wing, so to speak.
Oh, I see. So we've got all different types here on the bench before us. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about, the one you've got most of are these here with these like trumpets?
Yeah, the trumpet ones are Sarracenias or North American pitcher plants. They are hardy plants native to North America. So up the East Coast from the Carolinas, North Florida, Virginia, that type of place. And they survive in bogs and swamps there.
Okay. And then they catch flies and insects, they go down.
Flies, wasps, bluebottles, quite large insects.
Really? Well, what would make a fly want to go? They're very attractive and they almost a bit look like a cobra head, don't they?
Indeed. They have very enticing tubes. The tubes at the top of the tubes, I can show you one close up and you can see.
Am I safe getting close
you're
to
safe,
this?
Martin. Yeah.
Don't want to fall in.
As long as you haven't been naughty. You can see them glistening here. That's the nectar that they produce. The nectar is also a narcotic, so it drugs the insect, at which point it becomes very drowsy and then ends up falling into the tube and becomes plant food.
So basically the plant digests it, breaks down
with enzymes, and that's what feeds the plant.
Okay. And they're all different shapes and colours and sizes. So are these all bred? These are hybrids, presumably.
The majority here are hybrids. We do have the odd pure species like the leucophylla, the white one, and the flava, which is the yellow one. And the majority, however, are crossed with each other to get a certain colour or a certain height or a certain look.
So these yellowy green ones, flava, they would be how they would be growing in the wild?
Yeah, that's how they would grow in the wild. The white ones as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're a specialist in these. This is what your nursery is
allegedly.
About. So how did you get into growing these, unusual plants? Because they're not something you see every day.
No, quite. It started as a hobby, just collecting plants that are a bit different, which I always did from quite a young age. And then I just went on to a certain plant that I just loved the look of them. I didn't even know they were carnivorous, to be quite honest. And the collection then, as you can see, got out of hand and literally became a business.
Yeah, and you've been doing Wack's Wicked Plants now for a number of years.
Yeah, I've been doing it on and off for about 20 years, but as a business, 13 years as a commercial business. So with me and my wife, Alicia, we run the business together. So yeah, that's been us on the show circuit and everything else. About 13 years now.
Yeah, and when you say the show circuit, that's the flower shows, isn't
Absolutely,
it?
Absolutely, yeah. We started off at small shows and little village shows, if you like, car boots, anywhere where we could sell our plants. And then we progressed to Harrogate Flower Show, the Great Yorkshire Show, RHS shows, Chelsea and Harlow Car.
And you are, of course, a gold medal winner with the RHS, and you've got Chelsea gold medals under your belt.
I think we've got about 14 RHS golds now and 3 Chelsea golds.
Yeah, which is quite an achievement, isn't it?
It is. We're quite proud of that, yeah.
And how easy are these for people to grow? Because you sell them and you do some breeding as well, don't you?
We do. We do our own crosses and we grow as much as we can from seed. However, for us, unfortunately, they are slow from seed, with the exception of a few sundews and that type of thing. But division's the quickest way with these. We find them fairly easy to grow, but obviously I'm going to say that as I'm a plant seller. But our nursery is unheated. Our nursery in Scampston, there's no electricity there, so the plants have to survive cold, heat, and everything in between. So if they're not tough enough to survive in our nursery, that's not something we really
No, exactly.
bothers
Yeah,
with.
and
So.
they obviously, I mean, it's quite breezy here today. We keep getting just a breeze, and they seem to be fine. It just
We have
wishes through them.
thousands that we grow outdoors all year round as well, which people are quite shocked when they come to the nursery and they see them growing outside in the depths of winter, sat in blocks of ice. So yeah, for us it's not unusual, but I do forget that other people haven't seen them growing like that. So it's quite an extreme reaction sometimes we get.
And as you mentioned, they naturally grow in sort of boggy soil. So I notice all of these are standing in saucers with a little bit of water in.
That's
so they
right.
They
on the
can
nursery, there'd be even more water, to be
Right.
honest, especially on a day like today. This is just because we're at a show. The saucers are handy to keep them topped up. But on the nursery, they'd be in deeper water than this.
So they won't stand being dry, essentially.
No, they don't like to dry out. That's the one thing that's the biggest killer of these plants is people letting them dry out.
Okay, so if anybody's a bit prone to overwatering, this is the plant for them, because you're not going to kill it.
Absolutely.
And in the wintertime, you can just leave them outside then.
We leave thousands outside. We also leave thousands in the tunnels and greenhouses. And the only thing we do differently is we reduce the watering indoors just due to lack of air movement. That kind of thing.
Okay. See, and these vary in size clumps, but if you leave it, does that clump just get bigger and bigger and bigger?
Yeah. The
But
ones
you'd have
we
to go into
use
a bigger pot then.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the ones we use at the shows, some of them are 20 years old. So there's been a lot of TLC gone into getting them to that size. But yeah, they are an impressive plant.
They are. I mean, they're just so colourful, and all day
Yeah.
long you've had people looking at them.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when
yeah.
you do your breeding, presumably you're cross-pollinating, because you've got one or two of the plants here that have got a very attractive flower and a tall flower spike.
The flowers are lovely, yeah. And if you look, the way to cross-pollinate them is you can see the pollen at the bottom there.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And you simply get a bit on your finger and go to another flower. And that one's not quite open yet, but
And you,
touch all 5 of these.
right, so that's your sort of all
So
the
you go all the way
reproductive
around,
parts in
and
there.
then that would be a cross between those two, and you can
Right.
back cross it as well if you want.
Okay, I see.
Or you can leave them outside and they'll get open pollinated, so you have a good chance that they'll get pollinated.
And do they grow
by
quite easily from
insects.
seed?
Very easy from seed, very slow from seed,
Yeah.
but very easy from seed, yeah. Just
Okay.
grow them in January in freezing cold conditions, sprinkle them on the surface, don't put anything on top, keep them well watered, and wait a few months.
They are amazing. If anybody wanted to plant them around the edge of a pond, would they?
Perfect,
That
yeah.
would be ideal.
We always say for people who grow them around ponds have the least issues, as long as it's in a sunny position,
Yes.
because they don't have to water them, they don't have to worry about
course,
watering them, because
yeah.
they're sitting with their feet
Yeah.
in water. That's how they would naturally be growing in the wild.
Yeah,
So.
and it doesn't matter if the root ball freezes in the winter.
No. You can also grow them in floating baskets. We recently did it as a present for someone. She had a new pond and she didn't have a margins area, so we got a floating pond basket, filled it with sphagnum moss, popped the plant in, and it just bobs around in the pond quite happily.
Right, okay. So these are the Sarracenias.
These are Sarracenias, yeah.
Picture. You've got one
Yeah.
or two other plants that eat insects.
Indeed.
So what else have we got on here then, Pete?
We've got sundews, which are, we have our native ones at the front there, the English sundew and the round-leaved sundew. We've got Cape sundews from South Africa, paddle-leaved sundews, fork-leaved sundews from America, thread-leaved sundew from America, and fork-leaved sundews as well. So but this is a fraction of. There are
right.
literally hundreds and hundreds of them.
These are, to describe, they're quite a spindly plant, but they look
Yeah.
like they've got thousands of little hairs that are
Yeah.
sticky.
If you hold it up to, this is where the name comes from. You can see them glistening in the sun.
Yeah.
And they're like dewdrops, but they aren't. People ask me if I've sprayed them, but obviously it's just what the plant naturally produces, and it is like a.
Oh yes. You're touching it and stretching it out.
You can see it's like a spider's web
it
of
is, isn't
glue,
it? Yeah.
and you can see the insects stuck to them. They're very successful at what they do.
And then again, how does the plant convert that dead fly that's stuck to it?
It
into
basically
food?
absorbs them and absorbs the nutrients, which then go into the plant and feed the plant.
Right. Okay.
Because again, they would be growing in areas where the nutrients would be washed away, so there's nothing in the soil.
Do
as
these
such.
get bigger than this, or are they all
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
small? Because these are only sort of 10 centimetres.
Yeah, these are quite
4 inch
young
tall.
plants, and we've grown these from seed, so they were tiny. They're now, this I think is probably 3 years old, this one, and each year they'll get to about 10 inches tall.
I just wondered if in the
And
wild.
these will grow in hanging baskets, the
Oh,
fork-leaved
really?
sundews.
Would-
Yes,
would
and
they
some
catch
get
a little
enormous.
mammal?
I don't know about a mammal. I suppose if there was a big enough clump and a mammal came across them, it may well get stuck. I recently had to rescue a sparrow. I probably shouldn't say this, but I had to rescue a sparrow from our greenhouse. It had hit the glass, fallen onto the sundews, and it was stuck in a bed of sundews. So I had to release it, wash it, and let it fly off again. Probably won't do it again.
No,
but,
probably not. No, he knows to avoid those.
But yeah, there are some in the wild that would eat mammals. I suppose if something large fell in a Sarracenia, frogs and things like that. But we haven't any Nepenthes with us, which are the tropical ones, but they in the wild would catch rats, mice, birds. So there are enormous versions of the tropical one particularly. So and even the Venus flytraps, if you look at them,
they've got flies in,
but they will also catch larger things.
Right.
As the traps get bigger, I have seen pictures of them with frogs and other larger mammals in them.
So these presumably have all evolved because they grow in places where there's no nutrients in the soil, and it's their way of getting food.
Absolutely,
isn't it? So
that's way of supplementing their diet.
They are amazing. They really are. I can see why you get hooked to them, because just to look at them, they're fascinating.
And just the different kinds. This one's a cobra lily, Darlingtonia californica, which is from the other side of America, but totally hardy. We went and rescued some from up on Ilkley Moor, not on Ilkley Moor itself, but from a lady who lived up there. And she had a trough full of these growing in the shade. She'd had minus 18 one year. So we like plants that are tough.
Yeah.
We don't want plants that we have to mollycoddle too much. We want something that's going to really survive.
And they feed themselves as well, don't they?
They do, self-sufficient. We are very low. We have a low carbon footprint on our nursery.
Absolutely, yeah.
With
bit of rainwater.
No lecky. We collect our own rainwater. So yeah, it's I wouldn't say a cheap way of doing things, because it costs a lot of time and effort, of course.
Yes, and just skill in growing them. You mustn't forget that, Pete.
No.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more?
Well, we have a website and we have a nursery that's open by appointment. We're in the village of Scampston near Malton. We have a website, waxwickedplants.co.uk. And also, as I say, you can ring up and make an appointment, come and see our nursery.
Yeah, okay. Just be careful you don't get too close to the plants.
Indeed.
All right, thanks, Pete.
Cheers, Martin.
When you look at these, I'm going to call them exotic plants, but maybe, I don't know, they look like they're delicate. They need to be in, a hothouse or Kew Gardens or, the Eden Project, but you don't expect to hear about them surviving to minus 18 on Ilkley Moor, which is
You don't, do you?
Yorkshire, kind of wilds of Yorkshire, isn't it?
No, not at all.
But I think that just shows how hard they are. And, I think some of them have been, some of the Sarracenias Pete's talked about, they've been dumped on the moors in other parts of Yorkshire and naturalised, because he was asked to go and clear them out because they don't want them to become an invasive species. So they are pretty tough. As long as they've got boggy conditions, they will grow.
Because I think I actually stood in for Pete on his stand when he came to do a talk on the potting shed stage at a show, and so many people said, the house plants, I don't want another house plant, and it's just the opposite, isn't it?
But like he always tells them, they grow outside, but if you wanted to put it on a sunny windowsill, they are great at catching flies. So put one in your kitchen on a windowsill. But he said then in the winter they do need a cool period, so you'd have to put them out somewhere a bit cooler. But they're really unusual plants, and he's got a fantastic collection, so it's good to see.
And I like the idea of being able to overwater and it not being a problem. I mean, presumably you could still be a problem. He did mention it in the winter period, you need to be careful about how much you give them water, didn't he?
But he stands on the nursery. They're in plant pots with drainage holes in the bottom, but they're all stood in troughs of water with 2 or 3 inches of water continuously in there. So they're pretty
and to use as marginal plants around a pond is a really nice idea as well, isn't it? That would be quite different.
I don't know whether Pete's been to see them growing in the wild, because they're a North American plant, but I bet when they've naturalised they look absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
One thing that I was intrigued by, because there was a discussion about that manual pollination and making sure that take pollen, and he said the insects will do it, and I kept thinking to myself, don't the insects how do they do it without dying?
Well, that's the flower. Yes, no, it's only the sort of the funnel, the trumpet shape has got the
so that's not the flower, that's different, that's separate.
The flower it produces on a long stem. It's quite an attractive flower. So
am I right in thinking that when there's a flower that you don't get the trumpets? Is it one or the other?
Early in the season, I think his were in flower late, but normally in early season, April time, at the shows, they're in more flower than trumpets, and then the flowers finish and the trumpets grow back.
Okay.
So, but he had got the odd plant with the flower on.
Was the trumpet the one with the narcotics? Because I'm now sort of imagining this kind of drug dealer going, no, I haven't got any, no, we've not got any this week, but take some pollen,
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the Sarracenia's got the sort of the narcotic round the top, so I presume the flies or insects taste it, and that's what makes them drop down, and then they can't get out, and they just die and rot away.
What I want to know is, how did somebody find out that there was a narcotic around the
I
top?
don't think we should even go there.
Yeah.
No, probably not.
Maybe we need to move on.
Yes, but no, interesting plants. They really are.
Yeah.
And we'll hopefully get some on video at some point. That'll be good. Make a video about them. Pete told us about his website, so we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So if anyone's interested in finding more about them.
Have we got any jobs or anything? No, not jobs. I do the jobs.
You do the job.
Questions.
We have
tell
got a
us,
question. We have got a question from Monica about her alliums. Now, they gave a fantastic show in the garden, and she wants them to produce more and more. She wants more alliums in the garden, in the border. She's left the seed heads on and is hoping that nature will take its course. But is there anything she can do to make sure that nature does do its thing and give her loads more alliums for next year?
Well, they very often will self-seed. I mean, in our old garden, when we were up in North Yorkshire, we had loads that just self-seeded.
Yeah.
They became a bit of a problem.
I was
on
hoeing
board.
them off in
You
the end,
were.
wasn't I?
So by leaving the seed heads on, and lots of people leave them on, because even when they're dry, they look quite decorative. They will drop their seeds. It's a little small black seed, angular seed, onion seed, essentially, falls to the ground. And what you'll find is next spring, they look like little blades of grass. So you'll see what you think is grass growing in the border, but it's actually onion or allium seedlings. And that's essentially your new plant. But they take about 3 years to get to a bulb size that will flower. So what Jill used to do is, where there were lots, she would chop some of them off, because you get crowded otherwise, and leave little clumps and let them grow. They die down in the autumn, then they'll grow back the following spring a little bit bigger, die down, and after 3 seasons they will have formed a bulb underground that will be big enough to flower. So they will naturalize.
But if she wants them in particular places, so could she do that? Could she dig up some of those little seedlings next year?
You could do. I mean, one way
Put
of
them into
doing
pots.
it, they don't work so well in pots because they need to get the roots out a bit more. You could certainly try some, but if you've got a little area in a part of the garden or a piece of ground spare in a veg plot, for example, if when the seedlings are an inch too tall, you could dig them up with a trowel, get the roots out, carefully transplant them along into a row just a couple of inches apart, as if you're planting out onions or leeks, and let them grow. You can give them a bit of fertiliser, feed them, nurture them on. That way you know where they are, and you can let them grow, die down for 2 or 3 seasons, and then eventually you'll have a bulb big enough to lift.
Okay, so come back to us in 3 years, Monica, and let us know how it's going.
Well, you've just reminded me, though, because I've just realised that Wendy just bought a pot of alliums that we need to do something with. I've just remembered it's literally sitting on the lawn because I keep watering it. But it presumably needs to go in the ground, because you just mentioned they don't do brilliantly in pots. Or do you mean the seedlings? I mean,
the seedlings don't, but even the bulbs long term, if you buy bulbs and put them in a pot for the first year or 2, they do good, but long term they need to be in the ground. Really.
Well, I think this will go in the ground, which sort of brings me to the question of what part of the garden is best for it. Would you think kind of in a shady spot, or is it,
they're not too fussy, really, Sean. They do like good light, but they don't mind dapple shade or full sun. I mean, we've had them growing in both, so they're quite adaptable because they flower, and grow fairly early in the year. They tend to make the leaf, and then the leaf starts dying back before the flower comes. They almost do it in reverse. So that early flush of foliage when there's not a lot of tree cover is good. So I think just good light, but not dense shade, not dry. They need moisture in the ground, reasonable light, and they'll be fine. And you could plant those out any time now, or if you don't want to do it now, just let them die down in the pot, and then in the autumn knock them out the pot as the dry bulbs and plant them in the garden.
Okay. And I've got one of my questions as well, which is that quite a few weeks ago now, I was telling you I was waiting for my grass seed to germinate. Well, obviously, quite a few weeks have passed, and I have some nice, I wouldn't say thick, but nice looking grass, but it's, it's sort of gaps between it. Can I mow it? That's my question. Well, how long after seed, this is not turf that I've put down, it's seeds, once it's grown, how long after the seeds germinate can you mow it?
I think it's more on the height of the grass than how long it is, because obviously it's going to germinate faster at certain times of the year. But if once the grass gets to about, I don't know, 3 to 4 inches, what's that, 7.5 to 10 centimetres, then you can top it. So I wouldn't cut it close. I would probably just take an inch off the top.
Okay.
So that is what that will do. It will do two things. It stops it getting too long, but it encourages the energy lower down in the plant. So if you've got quite patchy grass, it will cause the individual pieces of grass to branch out from the base. It's a process called tilling. Rolling has the same effect. If you flatten the grass with a roller and bend it over, it means at the ground level it will bush out. So by taking the top off, it has a similar effect. So it will help to thicken it up, and then maybe give it a week and take it a little bit lower, and gradually take the grass down over the course of 2 or 3 weeks to the height that you want it to be, and it by then will have thickened up from the base and be really good. So yeah, you've done a good job there, Sean.
And now that, because we are actually getting some quite hot days now, aren't we? Our temperatures here in Lincolnshire certainly are increasing rapidly. Would Sean need to water that a bit now if it's...
Well, the thing is, now you've said we're getting hot weather, it's going to
gonna
absolutely chuck it down now, isn't it? You've fated
Probably.
it. That's what's going to happen, isn't it? It's usually the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yes, I mean...
Standard.
we don't water our lawns normally, because I think even if they go yellow, they recover. But
Yeah.
new grass, if it's new turf, or in your case, Sean, you've put seed, that hasn't got the deeper root system yet. So you would probably just need to put a bit of water on it if you think it's
I'd be
looking a bit
watering it
stressed.
fairly often anyway. Just because
to get it established. But and you know, people think you can't sow grass seed at this time of the year. If you're prepared to water it, you can. So if you've still got bare patches, I've got a little bit I need to do where we've had something standing on the grass for a while and it's killed a piece of grass. I will loosen that up, sow some seed, maybe put a bit of fleece over it to shade it, but as long as I keep it moist, I know that grass seed will germinate.
And we've got to be conscious of water usage, haven't we? But we've got a lot of new planting in our garden, haven't we? Especially around the patio area, because that's only just been done.
Yes.
So I did notice you out last night with the watering.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think if you're planting new, you've got to water. We'll use what we can out the water butts.
Yeah.
But then obviously when that dries up, we go on to the tap. But when you are watering, if you're watering perennials and shrubs, which we are in the borders, I don't put a sprinkler on and do everywhere. No. I use the hose pipe and I direct the water or watering can around the base of the plant. So we want it, rather than wetting the foliage, which is just going to dry up in the warm weather, I'm trying to get the water down to the roots. So I imagine in my head when I'm watering where the plant pot would have been the root ball, and I will direct the water that and just a little bit further out, a little sort of further in diameter, because you want the roots to grow out to that moist soil. And if you give them a good soak in and that water drains right the way down through the root ball, they're probably going to last then best part of a week without rain. Whereas if you just sprinkle over the top, you're going to be out every day because it dries up so quickly. So water thoroughly, but you don't have to do it that often.
And if you get water on the leaves, then that can be a problem anyway, can't it? Evaporate.
It can be, yes. It can scorch them. If you get too much water on the leaf, you'll get burnt spots on there because the sun gets on and magnifies it, and can cause all sorts of problems like that. So yeah, if you are going to water over plants, then do it in the evening when the sun's gone down. Certainly not when the sun is at its hottest, shining down on them.
And maybe use grey water if you've got washing up water or whatever, you can use that as well. Take the bowl outside and use that on your plants.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the trouble is when you chuck that on your garden, you sometimes get bits of carrot and pea out the washing up bowl. But yes, in theory, let it cool, because the washing up liquid isn't going to harm it. In fact, it actually helps the water soak in because it breaks the surface tension. And I know some people, I'm not clever enough to do it, divert their shower or bath into water butt and use that when it's cold. So you can use that grey water in the garden.
Good. Okay, so watering's a job that we need to be thinking about, be aware of, don't we? Really?
It is at this time of the year.
Any other jobs for us?
Well, I have got actually watering as well, because but with feeding, because lots of people have lovely summer containers and hanging baskets and all the seasonal colour at this time of the year, and they do need watering on a regular basis. So don't forget to keep them watered. Water either early morning or evening when it's cooler. But the other thing is... Now,
I'm going to interrupt you because that is a bit of a debate, isn't it? The morning or evening watering.
Or both.
Because you often used to say to me, don't water in the evening because then the plants are sitting wet. But then if it's going to be a really hot day, is it better to have them wet to start with?
It depends what it is, I suppose. You don't always want the foliage sitting wet overnight if you're watering soft lush plants and hostas, because if the foliage is wet it makes it more attractive to things like the slugs and snails.
Okay.
But if you're watering around the base of the plant like I think then it soaks down. But I think there's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other with this.
Okay.
I was talking to somebody recently and they said they thought the best time to water was 4 o'clock in the morning. I thought, why do you have to be so precise? I don't know. But whatever you're doing, your containers, early morning, late evening, water your containers with your lovely seasonal bedding in, but feed them as well on a weekly basis. Put some liquid feed into your watering can so they're getting all the nutrients to keep them flowering and growing healthily, because we want these to carry on right the way through till early autumn. Something we said we were going to talk about a while ago is thinning the fruit on the apple tree. We get a thing in the UK what we call June drop. So your apples will set and then naturally some of them will fall off, usually through the month of June, to regulate the amount on the tree. But if you think your apple tree is still carrying too many fruits, then it's a good idea to take 1 or 2 more off. And if you think where the blossom was and you get that cluster of fruit, you don't want any more than, say, 3 apples if it's an eating apple per cluster of what was blossom. Or with cooking apples, if it's a big one, only 1. If it's a small cooker, 2. So 1 or 2 cookers, 3 eaters. So if there are 5 apples trying to develop, they're all going to crowd each other out and they won't develop properly. So it's better to take the 2 smallest ones away, leaving only 3, and they'll develop much better. You'll get better quality fruit. So that's something we can do now the June drop has finished.
So depending on where you live in the world, do they call it different things? So say in New Zealand, Australia, is that going to be called the December drop?
Maybe. It may well be. We'll find out when we go. We'll ask that very question. But certainly in the Northern Hemisphere and the UK, we do it as the June drop, and then I always think a few weeks later you can do a bit of thinning.
Okay.
And then in the greenhouse as well, the tomatoes are doing really well. Again, we feed them every week. So if you've got tomatoes either in the greenhouse or outside, they need that high potash feed on a weekly basis to help the fruits not only grow, but then when they start to ripen. And once the bottom leaves on the plants do start to turn a little bit yellow as the plant gets taller, they aren't any use anymore. While they're green, they're useful, but when they go a bit brown and yellow, we can snap those lower leaves off, get rid of them. But it also means you're going to get better airflow around the plant, which helps with the ripening.
Just one quick question. Back to the apples. You just twist them off when you're thinning them, or
yeah, you do. I mean, they come off quite easily if you sort of just get hold of it and give it a twist. It usually comes off, Sean. Yeah,
right.
Not too difficult.
I'm hearing somebody's working on your water butt in the background.
Well, we exactly. We've got some. We're having
Noises
all new guttering around the house because we're finding with the heavy rain we get, it fills the gutter and just flows over. Which is not good in an old property that suffers with damp anyway. So we're having deeper, they don't look really any different, but they are a deeper gutter, so they hold a bigger volume of water. So yes, if you can hear the drilling, they're doing that. But they wanted to know where we're going to put the water butts, because we're going to have all new water butts as well, to save as much of that water as we can.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we get enough of it at certain times. It's just we never guarantee when it's going to fall, do we?
Exactly. We need to save as much as we can. So yes. So there you go. So I shall be out there later this afternoon positioning the water butts.
Very good. That's your job.
Good. Sounds good.
Good. Well, I think we're about there as well, aren't we, today?
Yeah.
We are.
We've covered a lot.
Busy.
Busy, yeah. And there's always things to do in the garden. So we're going to be back next week.
Yep.
And we'll do it all again, shall we?
We will.
All right. Take care. See you later.
See you then.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.